going over our Juiced Technologies add-ons. Just bear with me for a second, please. And like as always, we're going to be going through any of our add-ons. It does not necessarily need to be Exact Forms Plus or whatever the topic might be. To keep things orderly, if you could just raise your hand and using the reactions within Zoom, that would be awesome. And we're going to try to keep questions to about 5 to 7 minutes. And this is going to be recorded and put on YouTube after, so everyone's going to be able to watch this. So no worries if you miss something or you're trying to follow along. Now, one thing that I want to say, going into the new year, we wanted to kind of start fresh from the top. And because of that, we're going to go through a pretty basic Exact Forms Plus setup today, basically from scratch. Before we get into that, does anyone have any questions? New year, January 4th. If anyone's got anything, we're going to do open forum to start as we normally do. And if not, we're going to go into the topic. So again, don't be shy, but if you're here to do Exact Forms Plus introduction, then you're in the right place. All right, I'm going to take that as everyone is excited to learn about Exact Forms Plus. So I'm just going to share my screen again. I also just want to start off by saying, if you or members of your team have experienced any intermittent issues with the Juiced Cloud, we do understand there's a Chrome bug going around right now that has caused us to have slight issues loading our page. If you get any of those errors, please contact support or myself, Matthew T. at Juiced Tech, and we might want to schedule a meeting with you just to see what error message you're getting. If you haven't gotten this error, then please ignore that. All right. So as many of you may already know, this is the Juiced Cloud, and you can log into it right from our Juiced Tech homepage. You can just hit log in. And once you're in, you'll see any of your active add-ons. So right here, we have Exact Forms Plus. And as I've shown many times in the past, we have a few graphs and charts that just show you your activities, some pieces of information that may be helpful to you. But today, we're going to be setting up another table in my lease management office hours app. For people who have attended office hours in the past, or maybe have watched any of our videos in the past, this is an app we've used. So I'm just going to go ahead and get started with this. So if you saw me, I clicked set up another table, and it kind of skips the user token aspect and the application because we've already picked that. We already picked the user token. We already picked the application. So there's no issues there. So we're just going to go right ahead and pick the table within the application we want. So I'm just going to buzz over to the application, and you see your tables at the top, and you see I've already done an Exact Forms Plus installation here. So I already have document templates and document subtables. I as well have some DocuSign information, but we're not going to be going through that today. But since these tables are already here, we're going to be installing Exact Forms Plus onto this table, which does not already have it. So when I go into the cloud, we're going to pick tenants and prospects, and we're just going to double check tenants and prospects is that table. And we're going to have the output as a PDF. You could always change it to doc after if you'd like. And then we're just going to use that sample template for now. We're actually going to be customizing that. That's going to be part of the walkthrough today, is customizing your template as well as making sure that it's going to look the way you expect. So we're just going to go ahead and hit finish. And this is going to load for about a second, and then it's going to give us the fields that were created. So we got the 4 fields, the EFP document, which is a file attachment field, EFP date, which is a date time field, and then 2 flavors of the same ice cream really is generate EFP document and generate EFP document PB. PB stands for progress bar, so there's just a slight difference with those. So we're going to go ahead, and now that I installed it here, I'm just going to hit refresh. And I'm also going to hit refresh on this document templates page. So you're going to see if I put these in order, we're going to have document template 6 should have been created. So there it is, document template 6. So now that we have that installed, I kind of already have an idea in mind of what I want to do. Since we've used this app for kind of lease agreements in the past, I thought it would be kind of a fun idea to do a welcome letter. I think that might make the most sense for kind of the steps of where we are in the process. So you can see that we have a connection, a relationship to the leases table. So we see that we have a 1-year lease kind of filled in there. So we're going to end up making a subtable with that. And I do already have a small example of a document template. And this is really just kind of a kind of throwing something together quick, just so that we can build this together. Now, I'm going to take a second before I really go into it, because we're still kind of at the scratch mode. I've got everything set up to start working. Does anyone have any questions based off of what I've done so far? Now, remember, all I did was log into the Juice Cloud, install it into another table in my app, and I'm ready to get started building my document template and everything needed to really create or generate a professional document from this app. No questions? Okay, good. Yep, should be pretty simple. So there shouldn't be anything too difficult to follow along with. But again, this is feedback we've gotten in the past. People have wanted us to kind of start from the beginning. So that's what we're doing here. And B, people have said that sometimes we move too quick. So if you have questions or you want me to slow down, please do not be shy to ask or to, kind of chime in. It is totally reasonable. So what I'm doing now is I'm just customizing this Quickbase form. This should be native stuff for you. And I'm just going to call this EFP. And I'm going to do the above fields. And I'm just going to insert 4. And we're going to do generate EFP document, generate EFP PB, EFP document, and EFP date. And I'm just going to have all these on the same line. And I'm going to use some alternate labels for these. All right. So you see here, we have this EFP section that I just made. And so I missed the first couple of minutes. I see it's being quoted. Well, yeah, yes, Dwight, you will get a received copy of this. This is going to be on YouTube, so you'll be able to follow along with this after, for sure. Good question. Thank you for asking. So now that we have the buttons on this form, technically, I could click this right now, and I would be generating document template 6. And let me show you why I know that. When you have these buttons, as long as you have the correct role and permission, you should be able to see this menu when you right-click in this gray area around it. Everyone, when I tell people to right-click, sometimes they're right-clicking too far away. But if you right-click in this gray kind of shaded area around it, you should get this menu. And you're going to want to hit Edit the Field Properties for this field. And you'll see kind of our formula. So this is what's actually going on when you're executing the button. And there's some good stuff to show here as we're going through this. So I'm going to go through each one of these just so you guys have an understanding of what's going on. Line 1, this is our URL. You'll never have to change this. So you can totally ignore that, as well as line 2 and line 3. 9 out of 10 times, you're not going to have to change your client ID. This is your unique client ID. Imagine it as a record ID for Juice Technologies. So you will not need to change that. Line 4, this is the app that we're running it in. And we just are simply saying we're doing it for this application. Again, you don't need to change this really ever unless you're putting it into a new app. And even if that's the case, Quickbase is smart enough to know that it's going to be whatever app ID or app DB ID you're in. As for what table we're executing this from, we're taking the DB ID of the document templates table, and we're taking template 6 from that. So TPID stands for template ID. So as I was showing you before, it's actually the record ID from the document templates table. So when I made this, we're actually getting it from 6. So this is the one we're going to end up editing. So I'm just going to open this up here so we know. But remember, it's document template 6. Let's say, hypothetically, I did this again, or I made another template just by hitting, new document template. You'd want to make sure that you put in the correct number here. So let's say it's 7, you put 7. One of the common questions that we get is, okay, I want it to be dynamic based off of what, what the situation is. If it's a welcome letter, if it's an offer letter, if it's, a termination letter, whatever the situation might be, People do want to vary that based off of a change in Quickbase. I could definitely go through that. I believe I had gone through that a couple times in other office hours, so I'm not going to run into that right now, but that is definitely something you can do. So back to this, row 7, line 7, this is FN. FN is file name. So if I didn't want this to be EFP document, if I wanted it to be a welcome letter, I can absolutely do that. This is saying what record are we doing it for? And we're doing it for this record ID. And actually tenant number is replacing the record ID name. So that's why it says tenant number there. For most of you, this will say record ID number. But if you do change that key field, that's what it's going to be. And again, we're doing it for this table. Now for line 10, FA ID, that's the file attachment ID number. And this is where we're going to store the document. So field 68. And then EFP DTE, that is the date. We're doing the date into field 69. I said before when we were doing the installation that you could very easily change what the output type would be. And this is where you do that on line 12. You have doc FMT, which stands for doc format. So we have PDF. If we wanted that to be docx, you would just put docx in there. And we'll keep it for PDF for now, but that's how you would change that. And then stream equals Y essentially just opens it up in a browser page. That is the native functionality for the URL version of this. For the progress bar, it will not do that. And then app token is only there if that is required for you. And of course, with any URL button, you could change the colors. You could, really do whatever you please. So I'll just make it blue. All right. So now that we have all of that figured out, I just want to, again, pause and stop. Does anyone have any questions based off of the parameters that you saw there? Those are the basic default parameters that everyone's going to get upon installation. That does not mean, though, that those are the only parameters. I want to make sure that's clear as well. If you go to our help site and navigate under Exact Forms Plus and go to Formula URL Parameters, we list out all of these parameters with an explanation, just kind of how I explained it to you, of what they do, what they are, and why they're there. But we also have additional parameters that are not always required that will make life for you potentially a lot easier. Something like add files is very commonly used. And something like, let's say, test mode is pretty important. But again, these are all a little bit more advanced. So I'm not going to go into these today. We're going to try to keep this as simple as possible. But if you're interested in adding any of these additional parameters, please feel free to do so, and let us know if you have any questions that could be really helpful. Something like repository allows you to store the document into another table. There's many use cases where these are very useful. So if you have any questions on those, please let us know in the chat, or we can definitely speak to you after. All right. So we've gone over the button and we know what it's going to do now, but we still have to kind of customize our template. And that's really going to be the main part of the rest of this, is we're going to be going through that template. So we have all of these fields here, and the way Exact Forms Plus work, and really all of our add-ons, the way they work is we're grabbing information from this record, from this table. So you want to make sure that the information that you want to include on your document is found populated in one of these fields. So for example, field ID 6, again, if you right click on company name or right click in this gray highlighted area, you'll see the name of the field as well as the field ID. This is going to be very important for us during this process. So you need to be able to understand that each field has a field ID number. And for many of you, this may be redundant. This may be kind of rehashing the same information you already know, but we just want to make sure that this is clear and that this can be used for people from any level of expertise of Quickbase and of our add-ons. So one of the ways you can find it is by right-clicking, like I just said. But the other way is in the settings gear of any table. You'll see that, your regular settings menu. And if you go into fields, you'll actually see that each field has the field ID number here as well. So those are kind of two ways where you can find the information that you want to include. And for us here, there's obviously some information we're going to be including on the document that I'm about to show you. field 6, field 7, field 21. Let's just pull this over for now because this is what we're actually going to be generating. You can see I already have field 7 and field 6 on here, field 21. This is information that I'm going to be using to show you guys how to generate the document. One thing that I want to go through now is basically how to set up your document. So you can start, if you have a template, if you have already if you've already been generating something in the past, and you kind of had a mold that you were just copying and pasting into, that would be a great starting point for you. And again, this does have to be a Word document. So if you had a Word document version of that template that you've always used, that would be the best way to start. Another way to start is if you don't have that, we provide a sample invoice template. And if you just open this up, this is just a very, very basic invoice template, which you can modify yourself. This might kind of give you something to start off with. Some of our clients will just kind of modify this to be of their own, put their own logos in, and they could use this right away. So we want to give you something to kind of get you off your feet. If you have issues making your template, or you'd like to make something more advanced that you can't necessarily work with, we can help you with the setup process. So please let us know and we'd be happy to help you. But let's just go back to my template. So on here, when I'm identifying the fields that I want, and again, this is a very simple, welcome letter. I just wanted to show you guys the base mold. Thank you very much, comma, tilde 7 tilde. So this is how we're actually mapping the fields onto the document with these tildes. So the tilde can be found right next to the 1 on your keyboard. And that tilde, and then you want to take the field ID and then an additional tilde is how we're going to map that. So for field 7, which is primary contact, I'm going to be saying, thank you, Vivian, for picking our property. And I'm going to show you guys all that in a second. So let me just save this and make sure any changes you make that you save as, because you're going to want to make sure that you have all of your up-to-date changes. Welcome letter. And I'm going to call this 1.0 because I know I'm going to be coming back in here and changing this a few times. So we have welcome letter 1.0. And again, like I said, this is just plain text right now, as simple as it gets. And I'm going to open up, again, this document templates table. And if you're doing the setup for the first time, these will be 2 new tables, document templates and document subtables. So you can open that up. You're going to find the template that you're working with, which for my example, it's template 6. And we're going to edit this. And this is just native Quickbase editing. And instead of it being sample template, we're going to call this welcome letter. I'm going to go through the CList in a second. The CList is very, very important. And then we're going to also update our template. So we're going to take this, and we're going to do welcome letter 1.0. And we know the master table is still tenant and prospects. We're going to keep that. And we're just going to hit save. So just so you know, these 3 fields right here, this is for DocuSign information. So don't get confused by this. If you don't have DocuSign, they won't be there, but they are there because we have used this app for other setups. But now that we have our template in here, and again, the template I added was this one right here, I can see that I have kind of marked off a couple different fields here. So 7, 55, 6, 53, 21, 22, excuse me. And I want to make sure that I have those in the C list. There's two ways to do that. One is to either just simply adding them. So if I do .6, .7, that definitely works. And I can hit save on that. But if I wanted to add it in maybe a more simple way, I can click this EFP configurator. And what the configurator essentially allows me to do is just go through and check off the ones I need. So I already had 6, I already had 7, but I'm also going to want to include, I believe it was 53. I believe I had 55 as well. And then I had 21 and 22. Now, if this is not set up the way you want, you can sort by field ID. So it'll go low to high, which will probably be the easiest. And I believe you could also do alphabetical. So I'm just going to hit apply changes and close, and you'll see my CList gets updated there. So now that we're kind of at that point, my CList is updated, my template is updated. Does anyone have any questions? We're 20 minutes in, and this is how quick it can go on the most simple versions. Questions, comments, concerns on where we're at? No? All right. Oh, I see something in the chat. Let's see. Does CList have to be in sequence? Great question, Laura. No, it does not. The CList does not have to be in sequence. There's actually very few scenarios where they do have to be in sequence. Let me pull up one of those scenarios now. One of the only times you'll need to have it in sequence is if you are trying to do something like this. So what I'm going to be going through in a couple minutes is images. So not to skip ahead to this, but if you wanted to use a file attachment field, but not all of your records have a file attachment. So you don't want to have that blank space in there. You don't want to show ~I 23:100, because it doesn't necessarily need to be in there. You can create a separate field to show that. And you can say, if the file is greater than blank, show that different image. And then you would reference the new field, and for this example, it's just 24 on there. But one thing you have to do is you have to make sure that in the CList 24 comes before 23. This is one of the very few examples where this has to happen, because the way Exact Forms Plus reads the CList, it basically needs to say, okay, that formula field understands what's going on and then shows field 23 after. I'm sure if Keith was here, he could do a better job of explaining why that is. But for 9 out of 10 cases, you do not have to have the CList in sequence. So very good question. Any other questions before I continue? I will be going through images in a few minutes as well. And again, this is our help site. This is available to everyone. I believe Justin has already provided a link in the chat. But there's a lot of resources in here that can be very helpful for you. All right. Don't believe anyone's got any more questions, so we're just going to move on. So now that we have that CList filled out, and again, not in sequence, just the order that we added it, we can go in, and for this tenant and property, we can actually go ahead and click the button. And this doesn't mean that we're done, but this can give us a little bit of a sample of what's going to happen. So, thank you very much, Vivian, for picking our warehouse as the site for your next location for Ford Motor Companies. We want to personally welcome you to your new property at St. Louis, 1070. Below is the information needed for the lease agreement you have signed via DocuSign. So this is where we're going to be adding a subtable in a moment. And you actually notice here, we have the office phone, but we don't have the fax. So one of the things I've written down that I wanted to show you guys is what happens when a field is blank. As you may guess, if there's no information in Quickbase, so if you look here, fax number is blank, it is going to be blank on your document. And I've gotten that from people all the time, actually. And I can just put 123 in here. And when we generate it again, you'll see that it is going to populate. But believe it or not, that is a very common question is, well, why isn't my field showing any information? That's actually because there's just no information in Quickbase. So just have to always remember that we're grabbing it exactly as it is in Quickbase. So if a field's not populated, but it's included on your form, you will see blank. So that's one of the questions I wanted to make sure I went over with you guys. And that's our first sample document, just to go through the most basic versions, the basic setup. One thing that we also get all the time is people say, do I have to click the button every single time I want to see the document? No, you do not. That's why we actually provide you this file attachment field, which stores the document after. So once you click it once, as long as you don't need to make any changes to the fields, you can always open it back up after the fact, and you'll get that same version where you see all the information and you don't have to generate it again. That is definitely something you do not have to do. You do not have to click the button every time. Alrighty, so I'm going to move on. And before I move on, last questions for that's master table. So basically what we just did right there is at the document template level. I'll just use this one. At the master level, we just went through just adding fields from the form from your main table. But we're going to dive in a little bit more now. Okay, Sean, question, great. I appreciate participation.
Yeah, so I know this is more of an outgoing template. On an incoming template, how, and maybe you're going to discuss this in a little bit, but how would you handle like a checkbox, for like a yes, no, or something like that?
What exactly do you mean by incoming? Like someone sends you something?
Yeah, so like let's say we have a membership application out on the web and they have to check, if they're doing like a 6-month contract or a 12-month contract, and we want to capture that check mark.
Right. That actually wouldn't be Exact Forms Plus.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Yep. Exact Forms Plus is just for creating documents from Quickbase.
Okay.
You can do that with some of our other add-ons. We have email parser, document parser, and DocuSign. All three of those allow you to grab information from that form that people fill in.
Okay.
I think that would be the best place to go for that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, no problem. So yeah, that's a good question. And for incoming forms, Exact Forms Plus would not necessarily be the tool for you. However, we do have tools for that. So maybe that'll have to be in upcoming office hours where we go through maybe an email parser. But to continue here, now that we did everything at the master level, we want to make sure that we go through and add that subtable. So on that document, if you noticed, I said, below is your lease agreement. So we have a related table. And if you look and we go into settings and table-to-table relationships, tenants and prospects have a one-to-many relationship with leases. So we're actually going to connect it to leases and we're going to pull some information over onto that sheet. So if I go in and hit add new document subtable, now this is where we have people far and wide asking us questions. And this is very important to go through and make sure you understand because this is very, very powerful. And this is a key to Exact Forms Plus. So when you have the master table as tenants and prospects, you can select a subtable as well, which I'm going to do as leases. I'm going to call this lease info as a subtable name. Now, on this filter criteria, we already know that lease number is, tenant number is tenant number, and that's because they are related in the right direction. So we already know what information we want to bring in. We basically want to grab, and I'll bring it over, this record from this report link. That's essentially what we're doing here. If you have questions on this, definitely let us know. If you have questions making the query, we can definitely go over that. In some of our other sessions, we have gone over this filter criteria section. So you could definitely refer to that, but I'm not going to go too much farther into this. On the next table, you see all of the fields from that leases table. And now this should look somewhat similar to what we had for EFP Configurator. And you can sort it in similar ways. So you could sort it by field ID. You could have it be in numeric order or anti-numeric. You could also filter it by field name to be alphabetical or anti-alphabetical and by type as well. And I guess you could do it by width, but I'm not sure why you need that. So we're going to go through and we're going to say we want to have a couple of these in. So we're going to do active landlord, and we're going to go back and we're going to do active landlord email. And let's see, what else do we want to include? Let me see what's here. So one thing you could always do is based off of what you have in your report link, you could almost have these side by side and go through the fields that are in the report link. Many times people just want to recreate that report link on the document. So you can say, okay, let's do Control F. And Control F is a great way to find things if you don't know where they are. If you don't know the field ID, if you know the name, but not the field ID, You can do it like that. So I can do, okay, let's do tenant, and let's see. Okay, so we got a couple things here. So let's do tenant company name. And let's do one more. We'll do lease term. Right. Okay. So that's good. So now we have a couple fields here, and we have the order. So the order is right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we want to say, okay, I think the lease term should be the first thing that we show, we're going to pull that over and pull that to the top. Come on. And now we'll see lease term at the top, and you see in red that there is change. You can also change some other things about it. So we know that lease term should be text, but if there's something where you want it to be different, you might have to choose one of these other options. One thing that is a common question is when you have a decimal place, if it doesn't show the decimal place, you might need to use float. But 9 out of 10 times, this is going to give you the correct type. It's just based off of what the field is in Quickbase. So if you wanted to have the width change, so when you're making these subtable tables and the columns is not enough, you could say, let's make that 75. We'll make this 75. Emails can stay at 50 and company name can stay at 50. But let's do this. One thing that I actually have one of my colleagues said we should show is let's say I wanted to make the column label show nothing. I could actually write this as null, and that'll make the column name be blank. If I wanted to make the lease term just say term, I can write term there. You know, those are a few ways you can change this. To go a little bit deeper into it, there's also advanced settings. So if you hit advanced settings, we have a couple different options that are specific to that field. So we could do the column header alignment. So since it's the one furthest to the left, maybe I want it on the left. If I wanted to have this be bold in the font, I could do bold. And I can also change the font name. We have a bunch of different options here that might work for you. I'm not going to go too far into that or the size right now. Column data properties. You could, again, also for these, you can change the alignments. I'm not going to worry about that too much right now either. And then same thing for the font properties for the data itself. Actually, you can do the same thing. So we're not going to make that bold today, but these are just some options we have. One thing that's always good practice is you can come back in and just check to make sure that those actually applied. Sometimes when you hit apply, it doesn't always register. It depends on how it's feeling. So that worked, and that's still there. So that's good. And if you hit next, there's a couple more options here. So sorting and grouping. If you wanted to sort it by, let's say, date created or by lease number, you can do that. Let's see, what's a good one to do? I'm actually not going to do any sorting. Grouping, you could also group by a certain amount. So if there's multiple records that are going to be in the subtable, which 9 out of 10 times there are, you can group it by a certain thing. So if you wanted to group it by the active landlord, you can do that. If you wanted to change the header color for this or the alignment, you can do that as well. You know, you can really get fancy with these. Again, this is more of a basic setup, so I'm not going to go too far into detail on that. One thing you could also do, and I don't have any numeric values, but this is a little bit more advanced as well, is you can subtotal and grand total. One thing that people very often have a misconception of is this display text for the subtable row. You want to make sure that you're picking the column to the left or to the right of the field you want to subtotal. So if you want to put that in, you want to make sure that you have the display just one over to the left. I believe I went over that in another office hours call, but I just wanted to make sure I touched upon that. If you have any questions on the subtables in general, please, feel free to reach out to us. Or if you have questions right now, feel free to either raise your hand or put it in the chat. We'd be happy to answer. And lastly, subtable formatting options. Again, this is just advanced formatting. This is going to help you create as professional of a document as possible. Again, you have the table alignment, column headers show or don't show. If I uncheck this is going to hide them all. Display table borders. If you don't want to show, an actual table, you can shut that off. and that will actually disappear that whole column on the right. If you wanted to customize the table borders, have different styling, these are all options that you would natively have in a regular Word table. You can always update these things in Word, so we try to give you those same options here. Table header background color, table header font color, all of that can be updated and changed here. If you have a hex code, you can put that in there. Alternative row shading, row shading just in general, you can always do that as well. These are tools that can be found in Word that we just want to make sure we mimic so that you can get the most out of this tool. And then page breaks and repeat columns. Again, these are just, miscellaneous options is the perfect way to put it of how you can, upgrade your document. So once you're happy with everything, you can hit save and close. And if I open up this record again, you'll see this setting strings gets updated. You'll see the configuration name as well as the template reference. And the template reference is really important because that's how we're actually going to put it onto the document. So let me just drag that document back over. And just like we have tilde 7 tilde here, we can have for the subtable tilde strid equals 3 tilde. And again, that's exactly what that reference is right here. So that's what you should put in. For those of you who don't know, that stands for subtable record ID. For each subtable you make, it's going to go up obviously by 1. So if you make one and then delete it and make another one, it's probably going to be strid equals 2. One thing to keep in mind is if you do delete it, you do have to come back in here and change it. Same thing with any field. If you delete a field, it's not going to be there. If you delete a field and it's in your C list, please make sure to remove that. Those are the types of things that are the minor maintenance that you have to do. And that's only if you're deleting things from Quickbase. So that's the subtable. And the other advanced thing that I wanted to show you was just including an image. And again, I say advanced, but this is kind of native, simple things that almost everyone ends up doing. So including an image, and we touched upon this for a brief moment before, but I want to include an image on this document. And it's going to be different for each document. So I want to make sure it's from Quickbase. I can, include any image I want that's just a static image. If it's going to be your header at the top of each one, I believe, I still have the sample invoice. If I wanted to just include a static image, this is that sample invoice we provide everyone. It can just be put in there. You don't need to reference an image like that. But if you want it to be dynamic based off of the record, you will have to do it like this. So images are one of the few things that have a different way of putting it in it. The only other one is really date that I could think of at the moment. But if I wanted to have tilde I for image, colon, and let's go find the file attachment field that I wanted to use. So I'm back in tenants and prospects, and I have this image file right here, choose luxury homes, and that's field 65. So I'm going to go back over here and do 65, colon again, and I'm going to do 100 tilde. And the reason why I'm doing 100 is because of the sizing options. So this is my favorite one to use. I find this to be the easiest. When this is used, the template width of the picture will be 100 and recalculate the height to be proportional with the width. To me, that usually does the trick. So that's what I'm going to do. And that's that. So now that we have that on the document, we have our subtable on the document. We're going to make sure that we save. One other thing I'm going to show is I'm just going to show, and I'm going to do tilde 1, 2, 3. Now, tilde 1, 2, 3 doesn't exist, but I'm going to show you how that looks when you have a field that's either not on the C list or doesn't exist yet. It's just going to show just like that on the document. It's not going to disappear. That's a common question we get all the time too, is why didn't the tilde appear? The answer to that is either A, it's not on the C list, B, it's the wrong field, or C, actually one of the other ways it could be is if it's touching something else. So if one of the tildes is touching another letter, or there's a period touching, there needs to be spaces between the tildes. You cannot have the tilde touching anything. So one place you'll notice where I do this is up here. with the 6, I actually have the period just one space over. If that were to stay like that, I actually do not believe that would work. But let's take a look and see. So I'm going to browse, save as, and we're going to save this as 1.1. I like to do kind of the numeric numbers at the end. So, version 1 is 1.0. This is 1.1. That's just a way where you can keep track of your version history, especially if you're making changes. It's just one way to stay organized. So now that I saved that newest version, I'm going to go back into the document templates. And this is important. Once you're back in the document templates, you have to re-upload the newest version. And that might seem self-explanatory to some people, but to others, it's not. You want to make sure that you update to the latest version, or any of the changes you just made are not going to be seen. So now that we updated the template, we want to also make sure that we have all of those fields included in the C list, and that's something you can't forget. So we now included also field 65. So just because it's in this image way we reference it, that does not mean that it does not need to be in the C list. So we want to make sure we go in, 65, apply, and close. So now you see 65 is added. So I think that should be just about good. Now that we have this in here, let's go ahead and give it a try. Let's see what happens. So I'm just going to hit generate again. And let's see what comes up. So we have it a little small there on the document, but here's what we had based off of what we built. We have Juice Luxury Homes. That looks about right for the image size that I put in. If you notice, that period actually did work. So maybe I'm incorrect when it comes to periods. I'll have to speak to a developer or Manal about that if she's here. But it's best practice to not have anything touching those tildes. And then, like I was mentioning before, if you have a field that's not in the C list, or that's not in your field ID numbers, you want to make sure that you have that there, or else it will show like this. So now that we generated this subtable and this document with an image, I noticed obviously this isn't taking up enough space. And I also noticed that null didn't work. I wonder if it's pound null. But let's go back in. Is that null?
Not to cut you off, it should have been capital, so N-U-L-L, all capital.
All capital. Thank you, Shally.
No problem.
Shally's first time talking in office hours, everyone. Shally's a colleague, so thank you, Shally. Let's go and check that out. And let's go ahead, and now that we have the subtable, one thing that I want to make sure that you guys remember to do is don't just add another document subtable. That's not what you want to do. You actually want to make sure you go into that record and hit edit subtable configuration. If you notice, I'm now in the document subtables table. So we're going to do that. So we're editing the existing one. So this should already be there. And let's go on in. So now we had all capitals null. So let's try that. So we remember that. And we also saw that landlord email. And one thing to do too that actually is pretty helpful in these situations is just open up what you already have. So I can kind of just look at it and say, okay, what do I need to do differently? So let's see. So we noticed that the active landlord email was not big enough. So let's make that 150. And the Ford Motor Company, I kind of want that to go across the top too. So I'm going to make that 150. And, I might also not want it to say active landlord email. I might just want to see, landlord email. Because these are things that I'm noticing after I make it my first time. That's kind of the beauty of it. You can make changes to it once you do it. And remember to hit save. But yeah, you can kind of come back in and make those changes as needed. And I also want to say, okay, so we have the subtable format. We have display column headers, borders. Let's make the header background color not gray. We have this nice blue on there. Let's go ahead and make that light red. Let's hit save and close. And I'm going to close this back out. Now, since I didn't make any changes necessarily to the form itself, I just made it to the subtable. The subtable is still referenced there. I hypothetically can just click the button again and see those changes. So I think that looks a little better. We have across a little bit more space. We do see the null work. So thank you, Shally. I would not have gotten that. I would have tried pound sign or something. And I find that this looks better, in my opinion, that it goes across the top more and takes up a little bit more space. So that is really a big general gist. Now that we've kind of gotten, I guess, to the finish line on this, I want to open it up again for questions. We really just did a full setup. I know that might seem somewhat simple, and it should. But if you guys have any questions, please let me know, because that is really everything for a very basic Exact Forms Plus setup. James, anything you want to include here? I'm throwing James on the spot. James is also a colleague.
Nothing that I could think of.
Well, that's good. If James doesn't have anything, then I don't know what else we can do. But yeah, the real main purpose of this was to let you guys kind of see from step A to step Z how to make a document. Of course, this welcome letter is going to seem simple, because it is. We have people who make extremely complex documents with formulas that help display things a little bit differently, allow you to dynamically decide which document template you're going to make based off of the template ID, as I was showing you guys before, in the parameters. So there's, of course, more you can do, but we wanted to start off the new year with something a little bit more basic, a little bit back to the fundamentals, and just so that we have people in the future who have questions can refer to this video. So if you're watching this in the future and you have any questions based off this, please feel free to reach out. But this should give you a good foundation for going forward. But that's really all we have today for you guys. If you guys have any questions or suggestions on office hour videos going forward, please let us know. We'd be happy to go over any topic you have. Last call for questions that don't necessarily have to do with Exact Forms Plus. Could be anything you guys have. We have a whole ton of add-ons, as you guys all most likely already know. We have really so many options for you, so many things we can go over. But if you guys don't have any questions for today, we'll wrap it up, and hopefully we see you guys next week. Oh, when will the link be available on YouTube? So the link should be available on YouTube by tomorrow.
Yeah, as I'd say, 10 a.m. tomorrow, the latest.
Great.